Hey guys, my name's Aaron Massey from MrFixItDIY.com, and today I'm here to talk to you about table saw safety, because earlier this week, I had an accident. If you follow me on social media, you know that earlier this week, while doing a cut similar to cuts I've done thousands of times before, I had an accident and managed to screw up my hand by making some careless mistakes that led to my hand making contact with the blade. Now, I'm extremely lucky and fortunate that I didn't lose any fingers. However, my fingers did get chewed up pretty badly, leading to a bunch of stitches across these 3 fingers, and I'm gonna be out of commission for at least a month or more. I'm not gonna include the graphic images of my accident in this video, but if you do wanna see the extent of the damage to my fingers, I will put a bunch of photos on my website along with the companion piece to this video, which you can check out in the description down below. Again, I was extremely lucky. Many people who have had table saw accidents have actually lost fingers or have done more severe damage than what I have, so I feel very fortunate. And I know it might sound odd to take table saw safety advice from somebody who has had a table saw accident, but I can assure you that I've been around this tool for close to 20 years and have always had a fearful respect for the table saw, and I've never considered myself someone who didn't operate the saw safely. So if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. And my goal with this video is to show you exactly what happened in my accident, how and why it happened, and how I could have avoided it, and hopefully give you a few tips on how you can avoid a similar situation down the road. So here's what happened in my accident. So this was the setup that I had at the time of the accident. As you can see, I had the piece, I had the blade set just taller than the piece itself. I was ripping a drawer front down to its final size to install in my custom vanity build, and the piece got behind the blade, resulting in the piece getting kicked back at me and my hand being sent into the blade. Now, I'm not sure if my hand went into the blade as a result of the piece coming back and hitting me in my side and my reaction to that, or if the kickback motion of the piece itself sent my hand into the blade. But I do know that I made 3 critical mistakes that combined led to this accident happening, and I want to show you those right now. My first mistake was starting the cut without locating my push stick first. Normally my push stick is attached to my table saw fence, but in this case, my push stick was actually across the shop, and I started cutting the piece before I realized it. Because this was a finished cut on a drawer front, I needed the cut to be clean, so I decided to continue with the cut just by using my hand. My second mistake was an immediate result of my first mistake, and that was because I was pushing through with my hand, I decided to slide my hand over towards the fence further away from the blade, thinking that it would make my hand safer, even though I know this not to be the case. In doing that, I actually changed the direction of the force that I was applying on the piece from the fence towards the blade. And when the piece got to where the majority of it was beyond the blade and the blade was no longer there to push back on it, the piece deflected immediately behind the blade, allowing for the kickback to occur. And my third mistake was not having my riving knife installed on the table saw at the time of the accident. A riving knife is designed to prevent kickback because it doesn't allow a piece to get pinched immediately behind the blade or allow the piece to get immediately behind the blade by turning like it did in my case. Had I not made any one of these 3 mistakes, the accident likely wouldn't have involved my hand, and let me show you why. So I'm going to start with the first one. If I had had my push stick, even if I was to push the piece very close to the fence and change the direction of the force I was applying on it, the kickback still would have likely occurred. However, my hand would have been up and off the table. And because my blade height wasn't that high, even if the kickback occurred, which still may have kicked me in the side, my hand would have been well above the table and my hand wouldn't have made contact with the blade. So it still would have been a kickback accident, but my hands wouldn't have been involved. Secondly, had I actually just left my hand closer to the blade than further away, force at which I was applying on the piece wouldn't have changed, and I actually would have been safer to have my hand closer to the blade than by further away, which seems to be counterintuitive, but it's true in this case. And 3, if my riving knife were installed, the piece wouldn't have been able to deflect and turn behind the blade until it was already beyond the riving knife, which means it wouldn't make contact with the blade at all, and the kickback wouldn't have occurred. So my riving knife wasn't installed because it's slightly bent and it interferes with my ability to use my crosscut sled. So rather than fixing the issue, I had taken the easy way out and removed it. And obviously that was a mistake. I think, at least for myself, sometimes I have a tendency to kind of rush things along and try to get as much done in as little time as possible, and sometimes I sacrifice safety for convenience or for speed. And obviously that is a tremendous mistake, given that it only takes one time to cause an accident like this. So while I obviously made a lot of mistakes that led to this accident, there are 2 things that I did that I think lessened the severity of the accident. Number 1 is that I set the blade height of my table saw properly. Had I not taken the time to adjust the blade height and the blade height was significantly higher, you can see how much more cutting area that would have left exposed above the table. So if my hand had made contact with that amount of cutting area, you can imagine how much more severe the damage would be. The second thing that I'm happy about is that I never stand directly behind the table saw blade for kickback reasons specifically. Now, in this case, obviously the piece kicked back, but it kicked back on kind of an angle, and it hit me in the hip in kind of a glancing blow, and the piece continued on. Now, had I been standing directly behind the blade, that piece would have shot back and hit me square in the abdomen, and I would have absorbed 100% of that impact. And you can see how much bruising was done with that glancing blow, so if I took the piece in a direct hit to the abdomen, there's potential that I could have had internal injuries as well. So I'm thankful that I wasn't standing directly behind the blade. So at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is developing good saw habits and sticking with them, because it only takes a split second for a potentially life-altering event to happen. So I just want to outline a couple more quick tips for you that hopefully will help you develop good saw habits so that you don't have an accident like this or worse. Number one is the most important, and that is take your time. Make sure that you have everything that you need to make the proper cuts nearby you. Make sure that you're following all the safety procedures that you possibly can, and take your time. Evaluate the cut before you make it. I think the majority of accidents happen because people were rushing or not paying attention, and that was certainly the case with me because these are not things that I've learned after the fact. I knew all of these things before this accident occurred, but because I was in a hurry and just trying to get something done at the end of the day, this is what happened. Number two is to never let your hands go beyond the front of the blade without some sort of push stick. Now, there's tons of different schools of thought as to what push stick is the best push stick. I don't really care what push stick you use, just use something. Imagine there's a do not cross piece of tape across the front of your saw blade, and if your fingers get to that point, you know it's time to transfer to a push stick. Hell, I don't even care. Put a piece of tape on there and write no fingers beyond this point. Just never let your fingers go beyond that line at the height of the blade. Number three is don't stand directly behind the saw blade in the event of kickback. Always set your blade height just taller than the material that you're cutting. Never reach over or across the blade to grab a piece that you're cutting. Never wear gloves or baggy sleeves or clothing around the table saw when you're using it. And always try to keep a blade guard or riving knife on the table saw as much as possible. In addition to these safety tips, I'll include a bunch more on my website that you guys can also check out. And if you use your saw a ton and you want to make sure that you're as safe as possible, you can always save up your money and purchase a saw stop. I just did that prior to this accident happening, but the saw didn't arrive before the accident happened. So from that perspective, it's a little bit ironic. This is not a paid or sponsored promotion for SawStop. They just happen to have the saw with the technology in it that I think should be industry standard. But until it is, they happen to kind of corner the market on it. Owning a SawStop doesn't replace having good saw habits, but it is an added level of security in the event that something does happen. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. And at the very least, I hope that it has made you reevaluate your own saw habits and maybe pointed something out that you might be doing that's a little bit unsafe and you should correct it before it becomes an issue. I also want to say a quick thank you to all of you who have reached out to me via social media and offered your support. Means a lot to me, and the healing process is going well so far, so thank you very much for that. And if you did like this video, please hit that like button and leave a comment down below and let me know. Also consider sending it to your friends who may benefit from developing safer saw habits. And if you guys want to check out more of my home improvement and DIY related videos, I'll leave links to those right here, or you can always visit my website at mrfixitdiy.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.